last video, we built the CSS for the first two sections. And in this video, we're going to continue along with building the HTML for the experience section. So this section right here with this timeline, once again, I encourage you to make this your own. So instead of using the text on the screen, really turn this into your experience so that this resume is useful for you. Okay, let's get started. So after our About section, we are going to put our cursor on line 34. Might be a different line for you depending on spaces, but it should be somewhere around line 34. So after that last closing section tag. So we're going to write the word section. I am going to give this section the class of experience. So section.experience. And I'm going to hit tab. There we go. We'll open and close a section tag. Inside of that section, let's just take a look at what we have here. So we have an H2, we have an HR. I'm going to wrap a large container around this entire timeline. So I'm going to use a div to accomplish that. And then each area in the timeline is going to be its own div. So this area here with current is going to be its own div. This area here with Brown School and the description of duties is going to be its own div. Then we're going to have a div here with Ashford School, and then a div with 2021, and so on and so forth. So what we will end up having is date, description, description, date, date, description. And then we'll use Flexbox to achieve this layout once we get to the CSS video. Okay, let's build. So if we go back to our HTML, we can use an H2 here, and we're going to title it Experience. And then underneath the H2, we have an HR. Once again, that's a self-closing tag, so it only needs an opening tag, not a closing tag. And then we're going to use a div. I'm going to give it the class of timeline, just so I can target this div specifically. And I'll hit enter and just give myself some space inside of this div. Now, inside the div, we're going to have a lot of little divs that make up our date and our description. So first things first, I'm going to add a date. So I'll say div.date. And then I'm going to add the year, so p.year, so paragraph with a class of year. And the first year was current. I'm also going to add a span here, and that span, it's going to achieve that dot on the timeline. So we're going to style that span to look like a dot. And we'll do that once we get to CSS, but for now we just need to build that into our structure. So I'm going to say span dot dot. So it's a span with a class of dot, and we're just going to leave that span empty. And let's go back just for a moment, and this dot is on the right side, so I'm also going to give it a class of right, because I'm going to need to position this dot specifically to the right of the word, whereas this dot over here is going to go to the left, and this dot over here is going to go to the right. So we're going to use the class of right as well, and in order to give a single element two classes, we can just add a space inside of the class attribute and then write our second class name. So now we have dot right, so this span has the class of dot, it also has the class of right, so it has two classes. Okay, next we are going to create a div with the class of description. And we are going to use an H3 for the school name. And it was Brown School. Okay. We're going to use an H4 for the place. So these are pretty important details. So I'm giving them a subtitle of a subtitle and a subtitle of a subtitle of a subtitle. So an H3 and an H4 because they are, in my opinion, pretty important details. So I'm giving them subtitles that will reflect that importance. And I believe Brown School was New York, New York. Yes. So New York, New York. And then if we go back here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. So I'm going to go ahead and write those 4 paragraphs. I am just going to use lorem ipsum rather than trying to copy out all of that text. But if you do have a resume handy, I would suggest pulling up that resume and just copying and pasting over your description. So lorem, that's 1 paragraph. Oops. Lorem, oops, paragraph, and then lorem, that's our 2nd paragraph. Paragraph, and then lorem, that's our 3rd paragraph, and then paragraph and lorem, and that's our 4th paragraph. So once again, we're using the tab key to have VS Code autocomplete this for us so we don't have to sit here and type everything out. So I'm going to save this. And then we're going to make our next div. So our next div is a description as well. So we'll say div.description. And this is Ashford School in Ashford CT. So H3, Ashford School. And H4, Ashford CT. And then I believe there's also 4 paragraphs here. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there's a 5th paragraph as well. So you know what? I'll copy this 1st paragraph here, and I'll just add that. Go back and add that to the top of my Brown School. So P tab, and we'll just paste that there. And then I'll grab this paragraph here, and I'm going to use filler text for the rest of it, but this short paragraph I'm just going to copy and paste over. Oops, we want to add a paragraph there. Paragraph, okay. And then we want our 4 paragraphs with lorem ipsum, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy these over. So I'm using Command C or Control C to copy and Command V or Control V to paste. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then we can move on to our next div. Okay, our next div is going to be our date. So if we go back here, we have date, description, description, date, date, description. So our next 2 divs are going to be our dates here. So we're going to say div.date, p.year, and this is 2021. And then we're going to add our span. So span ... And this one is going to go on the left, so we're going to give this one the class of left as well. Once again, we're just going to leave that empty span. We won't actually see that span until we get to CSS. So it's just, there's nothing inside of it. You're just not going to see it on the page until we get to our CSS and we actually give it like a width and a height and some color and like give it some styling. So I'm going to save that. And then our next element is also a div, .date, p.year, and 2017 was the next year. And then we're going to do span ... and this one was going to be on the right. Okay. And then we have one more description to complete here. So inside of the timeline div still, after the date div, we're going to open up our last description div. And the school is JFK Middle School in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we will say H3 JFK Middle School. H4. I can never remember how to spell Minneapolis. I'm just going to copy and paste this over. It's a hard one for me. My brain just doesn't want to remember. So Minneapolis, Minnesota, there we go. And I'll copy this first line just like I've been doing with the rest. So P, tab, and we'll just paste that. And then I'm just going to copy these 4 paragraphs and paste them underneath. Okay, I'm going to save that. I'm going to go and refresh our page just so we can see what all of this looks like. It's definitely not going to look like a timeline right now. It's just going to look like a wall of text, but it will start to look like a timeline once we get to CSS and we start styling. So let me give this page a refresh. And yeah, we just have like a big wall of text here. And an H2 and an HR that's way too big. So we'll fix all of that once we get to CSS. Now, before we move forward, I'm going to add a few more classes. So let me just take a look at our diagram of the website again. And let's just think here for a minute about how we're going to achieve this line down the middle. Okay, so in order to achieve this line, I'm actually going to put a border on the left-hand side of some of these divs. So on Brown School, on 2021, and on JFK Middle School, I'm actually going to put a border on the left-hand side, and then we'll see a line down the middle of the page. So I'm going to go ahead and give those 3 divs another class of line so that we can achieve that. So line here for JFK Middle School, line for 2021, so right here, line, and we're putting that on the parent element, so the div that 2021 is inside of should have 2 classes, the class of date and the class of line. And then we're going to go up to Brown School, and that div will have the class of description, and then it will also have the class of line. Okay, so I'm going to save that. And I think that's looking good. So we can refresh one more time, but nothing will change here. We don't have any style for this yet. And in the next video, we're going to take the time to style all of this with CSS. So you can stop the video here, and I'll see you in the next one.